Thank you, Dr. Chrisley. I'm super happy to be here. And I actually love how you introduced where you are by having the urban landscape behind you and saying you just came from the forest. Because, so I'm located in New York City. I live in Brooklyn, and I live part of the year in Brooklyn, and I live part of the year in Abiquiu, New Mexico, which is considered frontier, being far beyond rural. And I'll have some pictures of that a little bit later. I work primarily in the city, but all my work is based on what I do outside, which is a lot of hiking, a lot of backpacking, a lot of nature-based work. So the first project I'm going to show you was called the Moth Migration Project. And this is a commission. It started as a commission for 516 Gallery in Albuquerque in 2016. And it was to create an installation based on pollinators and pollination. And what I did was I turned it into a crowdsourced exhibition where I invited people from, internationally to make black and white grayscale moth. And that moth would be, it could be completely made up. It didn't have to be, an exact moth, but it would a minimum of 5 and as many as people wanted. And this exhibition would end up traveling. So it is still traveling. It's in Australia right now. And to date, I'm trying to even remember the number of people I have, but I have over 20,000 individual paper moths. And one of the reasons why I kept it black and white, a little bit design reasons, making it easier to travel to different places, and also really looking at more of the sort of the formation and creating an environment for people to walk into. And for people, they could be artists, non-artists. I have entomologists, I have children, I have a whole range of people participating in this. And it's continuing on. It's going to be going to the Denver Botanic Garden probably now in 2022. It was slated for 2021, but everything is back 1 year. Based on this project, I was invited by a downtown Brooklyn arts program called BRIC to create something for it's called Street Seats, which is part of the Department of Transportation, where I took my individual moths, which were originally lino cut prints, and blew them up into large stencils, into large vinyl cuts. And I splashed them all over the barricades, which basically, keep the cars out so that people can create seating and just make the streets a little bit more dynamic. Super exciting project that I just did was for the Yukon Art Center. And this is where it really gets into more nature-based work, where as an artist in resident, I hiked from the Chilkoot Trail, which is the Klondike Gold Rush Trail, starts in Alaska, Dyea, Alaska, and goes to Bennett Lake, British Columbia. And along the trail, I played bingo with people that I would meet. So I made this Chillin' on the Chilkoot bingo, and all of the cards are originally started from lino cuts and wood cuts. So I carved all these pieces, I printed them, I silk screened all the boards. I made 200 individual silk screen boards. This was on the right hand side is kind of a layout of different of pieces. So these are all things, animals, objects that you would find on the Chilkoot Trail. And these were my little game pieces that I packaged up. And so it was a backpacking trip. So I had, my tent, my art supplies, 200 bingo cards, all my food for a little over a 2-week period of time. And then on the trail, I would pick up different objects and draw them. So, I was camping every night, I was sleeping every night. And then when I would meet people in various spots, I would say, hey, do you want to play bingo? And I had prizes like $100,000 bar. It was a chocolate bar, or different coins, like chocolate coins. The whole idea was to do a public, kind of a social public interaction with people that was art based, but for, you know, people that are out backpacking and hiking, you know, they're not going to necessarily be interested in a regular artist talk. So a lot of work I do is in the woods and on the trail. And this watercolor drawing, where I should actually put myself there in perspective, it's almost 10 feet long. It's 4 by 10 feet. And it is a drawing of part of the trail. This was the trail that I hiked up. And if you can see, there's a little tiny spot of blue about halfway down. That was one of the hikers that are coming up behind me. I was up on the top of the trail, and this is the pass that goes over from Alaska into Canada. And it was just absolutely, you know, the most amazing, rewarding thing ever. And, you know, just lots of climbing, lots of hiking, breathtakingly beautiful. Lots of rocks all over. So, you know, right now I'm actually working on a project for next year for the Yukon Art Center, where that actually has to do with all of these different rocks. So this is kind of what the landscape looked like. I did a lot of climbing when I was up there. And so I spend time in these places as my source of inspiration. Quickly, another project was at Wave Hill, which is a public garden and art space in the Bronx in New York. And this was the making of a rock garden. And these are all hand cast flax and laser cut plants. The plants are based on plants that are at my home in New Mexico. And the little pots are based on, they have an alpine garden at Wave Hill. So it was based on the idea of these tiny plants in these multiples and kind of these intimate spaces. And inside each one were all these little hand-wrapped flax beads. So also based on nature, though from the city. This is from Brooklyn Bridge Park. And I would run every day from my home in the neighborhood of Red Hook along the water, checking out all the animals, the birds, what would I find for a 6-month period of time. And then I created this for Brooklyn Bridge Park. It's all the birds are linoleum cut and hand painted. The water is watercolor hand painted. This is about 14 feet long. This is about a 40-inch linoleum block printed goose and the mallard ducks. And in this room on the side, I had a public component where I made paintings of, these are all watercolor, of the salt marsh. And then I invited people to come in for a day of printing of different animals and objects that then they could add to this wall. So I had like in this case, like I had a turtle, I had birds. I realized put in my picture where the whole wall is just filled with what people came in and printed and cut and added to it. This was another part of the wall where it's covered in seagulls. And you know, seagulls are kind of amazing until there's too many of them. And then they're like creepy and kind of scary and they swarm all over. And I have been swarmed by them many times running along by the water. So I kind of did a little overkill of a lot of seagulls. And just one other Wave Hill project. This is also based on hiking. And from walking the grounds just north of the city in a park called Harriman, where you might find bears, you might find lean-tos, a lot of people go camping there. Again, these are all linoleum block prints. They're all hand printed, they're all hand cut out. And then I attach them to the wall. The leaves here, there's over 4,000 individually cut and printed leaves. So I'll build these environments, and the idea is conjuring up this sense of the wilderness. So when I'm not in New York, this is where I am in New Mexico, and I actually built my own studio. It's all made out of rock and mud. The floors are mud. I made all my own tables. I'm super proud of this because I'm very much a 2D artist, but when I wanted, you know, to get things done and made, I made them. Here I was working with an artist who was visiting. So this is usually where I am 3-4 months out of the year. And that's all in the desert. So oftentimes when I'm in the desert, I'm also thinking about like how much I want to be on water. And I participated in a project this last year where I had to make, I made a paper boat, and it was about water. It was about living on islands. It was about migration, immigration, It was curated by the curator of the director of the LA Printmaking Society. And this is a little bit bigger picture where you can see the original print and the boat underneath. And I'm super excited now because I'm actually making a full-size 12-foot wooden canoe in my apartment in Brooklyn, but it was not quite far enough along that I could include it in this. So just a parting last picture of a backpacking in Colorado. In the last like 4 months, I've gone out at least twice a week into the mountains. One, to sort of keep my sanity. Two, it's a place where I can go where there's really not very many people, and getting inspiration for further projects. So that is my high-speed presentation. So I'd love to hear your questions.
This is Chris from Victoria. You will hike with your artwork, interact with people you encounter as you hike. Do you see that as part of your process, or it's only for like collecting materials? What's your thoughts about that?
First of all, my work is very labor intensive, and my process of collecting I usually feel like it is like a physical memory for my inspiration, because I'm also like a super physical person. Like I run every day, I lift weights every day. I feel the best when I'm living in my body and I'm making my body do as much as it possibly can. If I'm not, it's hard for me to do anything, just even, small drawings. So to like constantly be in my body and moving through space, or when I'm printing, doing like high multiples, or, I do all sorts of printmaking, from silkscreen to litho to intaglio to relief, but I love carving wood blocks because, again, they're sort of the most labor intensive. So to answer your question on the hiking, the majority of the hiking, I'm going out alone or with a friend. It's not so much about, it's usually not about interacting with other people. A big component of the Chilkoot Trail Artist Residency with the Yukon Art Center was, we needed to give back, right? We needed to do a presentation in the States and a presentation in Canada. But my thought was, I don't want to just do a presentation. I want to make something interactive, because I think also as a printmaker, I'm used to working in community places, and I'm used to doing workshops, and it is very interactive, right? I'm always interacting with people, and I like that very much. And I prefer to give someone an experience versus doing a talk about what I might be doing. So in that situation, and I was thinking, it's like, well, what can I do that is also relates to when the gold rush was in the 1890s, relates to entertainment, is still relevant today, is something that all ages can do, and that would be fun. And it's like, well, games, it's like we need to have some games, and bingo would be the perfect game. I spent a solid 4 months, probably 50 hours a week. I mean, it almost killed me making those games. And I'm like, what am I doing? This is crazy. By the time I get to Alaska, I'm going to be so wiped out. I'm never going to want to see these again. So it was, really incredible amount of work. But I was really satisfied with it, because we played like the very first night on the trail. I just met with 2 other people. So it was like kind of the trial. And it was really fun. To like one of the biggest nights where there's one camp just before you go over the pass, where a lot of people have anxiety because those rocks, it's super steep. Some people are worried about making it over. And we had 47 people, and everybody was playing. And so there was lots of games or lots of prizes. And the park ranger there had brought some laser cut little badges. So it was really exciting to see everybody have so much fun. And that was wildly enjoyable. There was a day, probably like 3/4 of the way in, because by this point, everybody kind of knew who I was on the trail. And they're like, oh, are you the artist in residence? And I'm like, I am. But, I just want to draw today. So I'm like hiding out in my tent. So there were a couple times where it's just like, oh, I just need a little bit of breathing space. But so it So in general, yes, I'm out there on my own collecting sort of my physical and visual data. And then I love then doing interactions, afterwards.
My name is Noel or Noel. I'm in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia. I like your block prints very much.
Oh, thank you.
You said you work in wood. I presume you've done linoleum.
Oh, yes, I do a lot of linoleum carving.
Yeah, I do linoleum for my wine labels.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, I have to look those up. So what is your wine?
It's
Can I look it up? Can I see it?
probably not, because the only place that I've actually posted the wine label is on my Facebook page. It's called Heron's Vale.
Uh-huh. Oh, what a beautiful name.
Thank you.
I have an Instagram account, which is Stone Trigger Press. And it's named after, so my studio out in New Mexico is all made of stone. My street name is Trigger Drive. So it's Stone Trigger Press. And that's actually where I really update things is on Instagram. Try to do it almost daily. Okay, bye.